Episode 10, I believe this is.
10.
I think so. Well, we've had a tiny bit of a hiatus.
Yeah, a few weeks.
I don't think anyone's beating down the doors, begging.
No one's been chasing me.
No one's been chasing us up, begging for new episodes. I think we're fine. But yeah, no. So how are things with you? How things been training wise?
Things are good. First off, finally watched the Volk fight last night.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Banging.
So without turning this into an MMA
it's fine. I don't mind
podcast, although that might be the route it goes down.
I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah, man. What a beast. What a beast.
I know. It's like, it's hard to even like. I mean, he's definitely the greatest 145er of all time. Period.
Yeah,
has to be now. Like, it's kind of just like, what do you say? It's like every fight he gets better. It's crazy.
Yeah, he just looked so physically strong.
Yeah,
like that was the thing for me. He just looked so powerful and so strong. And like Rodriguez is a special fighter. I really rate Rodriguez, and he just made him look medium. Yeah. And there was a point at the start of the third where Rodriguez was starting to find his range, landing a couple of shots, and then as soon as Volk got inside that, just strength again, and he looked special.
It's just weird how the pecking order can work sometimes, because obviously Max and Yair fought, and Max won that fight, and they had a 5-round battle against each other. But then it's like, obviously Volk has beaten Max like 3 times now, but it's like, it's crazy how far ahead the champion can actually be, because if Volk didn't exist, Max would probably still be champ, more than likely.
100%.
Max beats everyone, so it's like,
I agree with that.
Like, Volk is just beyond that. Like, it's crazy how that can happen.
Yeah. Now there's one fight with Max and Volk that you could argue, but I don't think that changes. I don't think that changes the outcome of anything, because again, Volk has just continued to get better and better, and then obviously the last two, there's no question. So it's I mean, I think we are looking at something special. The thing now is, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, Islam rematch is the logical choice, I think.
Yeah, it is, and it's just now going to be super fights and money fights, I think, for the guy.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for John Jones, he'd be number 1 pound for pound.
Yeah, it depends on your argument there as to what you class as pound for pound, because he could technically be pound for pound number 1.
Yeah.
Like,
if he does win that 155 bout, it's hard for him not, because he's got it in 2 weights. Then it's hard for him to not say it's But I think he's got Ilya Tapura coming up as his next kind of next matchup. So I love Ilya Tapura. Ilya Tapura is a savage, absolute savage.
And again, I think Volk. It's Volk. I can't bet against him anymore.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible to bet against the man. Yeah.
It was the fight with Brian Ortega that changed everything for me. From that point on, I felt like there was chances of him getting beaten, and then from that fight on, I was just like, that's it. The guys, the guys are starting. That's it. I won't beat him anymore.
Yeah, legit.
At his weight, obviously. So yeah.
And he's small for a 145er as well. He's still a small guy. That's what's weird. Is like he's actually quite small. Like you look at him against Yair or Max or anyone like that, or Brian for anyway, he looks
Brian's a lot taller.
And to go up to 155 and hold his own, he must be unbelievable.
Hold his own with the best. That's the thing. It's not even to hold his own in that division. It's to hold his own with the best in that division. Yeah,
like, and the best by quite a bit. I don't really see anyone really beating Islam right now. So it's
exactly.
He must be so freaking strong.
That's exactly what I saw just watching the fight with Rodriguez, is just strength. He looks his takedowns were great, and they weren't like technical takedowns. They were just good, solid takedowns, and he looked powerful. Right. He could pick him up at ease. Once he got inside, and it's the same with that finish. Once he got inside, once he started landing big shots and got his control, like, it was just pure strength and pure power that won that for him.
Yeah.
And he looks like he'd be someone that would be absolutely horrible to grapple. Because he's not the world's best grappler, but he just stays on you. He just smothers you. He uses his strength so well. So
I think he should have got like an extra bonus for finishing a Mexican, because Jesus Christ, finish a Mexican guy deserves props. Like, if you finish like Mexicans beyond, like, I don't know if there's any other like breed of people that like are harder to finish than fucking Mexicans.
The fighters, yeah.
They have like another level of heart in them. I don't know what it is about them.
Respect to Rodriguez as well. There was a point at the end. I think it was just after they called it. He sat up and he was just like, yeah. Like, there was no question. It was a good.
I know now. Like I get it.
Yeah.
So I understand what it feels like now to like actually go. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't even know if has ever even been finished. I don't even.
No, definitely
not in a long time. Anyway, even if he has, like,
no, because that's the thing. Yeah, is something special.
It's like Brandon Moreno, another Mexican dude. Can't finish him. You can't finish the guy. You just can't do it.
It's just in that blood.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Absolutely. So, back to training, I guess. How's the injury, first of all?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've kind of sorted my shoulders out, but yeah, I've got like a bit of, well, I guess climber's elbow at the moment. So I'm in sort of only climbing once a week, I wrote myself like a rehab program for the next 8 to 10 weeks, just sort of following that, just sort of trying I think it was just a case of switching up training style a little bit. I started to go in the climbing gym and started to train a little bit more. I stopped trying to do kind of easier stuff and started training a bit more intensely. So I was constantly climbing at my limit. Which isn't great. So it's almost like, it's almost like climbing at 90% of your 1 rep max for like all the time, which just obviously like doing that suddenly was just a bit much, because I was like, I feel like I wasn't getting much from just going around the gym and just climbing willy-nilly all the time. So I started climbing, but then I think that's what eventually caused it. But it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But so I'm basically just doing a lot of isometrics, a lot of 90-degree things, just like a lot of eccentrics just with the elbow, a lot of isometric holds. I'm not doing pull-ups at the moment or anything, just nice and chill, just trying to rehab areas, still trying to work on external rotations to help my shoulders out, I got weak wrists as well, just trying to sort that out, just trying to spend some time trying to fill those gaps. And actually, to be fair, I think going back to some more mild climbing, because right now like my technique is what's really letting me down, and that'll kind of give me a chance to focus on that a little bit more, and then hopefully in 10 weeks I can start going back a little bit more intensely. So it just is what it is for the time being. I can still, as long as I can still go climb at least once a week, I'm kind of all right. Having to give it up completely is like impossible for me to do. So as long as I can still go and have fun and do some good stuff, then I'm kind of all right.
So going back to what you kind of said there about like sort of doing it at like 90% all the time, I'm guessing the same with climbing. It's the same with most things. It's like you need to back off, and it's technique over power, and
or at least do that for maybe a tiny bit of portion of the session. Like say you have a project you're working on, like that one climber's at your limit, do that for like an hour and then back off and just do some other easier stuff, which is kind of what I'm trying to go into now, my approach.
Nice.
But so I've had to switch up like how I train my fingers a little bit, because I did a lot of research. There's really great guys at Lattice Training. They're kind of the forefront of like training climbers. And I've stopped doing hangs from like the bar upwards. I'm now I've got like one of those pins you can stack plates on. So I'm pulling from the floor now. So less stress on my arms and stuff. But it still trains. So I'm still trying to get my fingers stronger, but it's now not hurting my elbow, which is great.
That's exactly it.
I can still keep that evolving, so that's good, because that was one thing I was worried about losing. I was like, oh crap, my fingers are going to get weaker, but I'm still training them, and it's fine.
Perfect.
It's all good, really. It's all fine, to be honest. I'm happy.
Nice.
Yeah, what about yourself?
What have I been up to? So I raced 2 weeks ago, I believe. 2 weeks ago. The plan with that race was always to just race through it, because it was kind of a last-minute race, and I've got my big race kind of coming up in 4 weeks' time. So the plan was always to just kind of use that as a test, really, not worry about my position. And I had a game plan, and the game plan for me really was to stay with the front runners. So it was a 13K race, and I knew the trail well. The plan really was to stay with the front runners until they broke off, like for a finish, and kind of keep myself in the mix. And I kind of, looking at the map of the race that we were doing, up to about K11, it's pretty flat. And then there was a really, really steep hill. that would take you up for about half a K. And then I knew for that last 1.5 K, that's where they were going to race from the top of that hill down to the finish line.
Yeah, right.
So my plan was to always stick with the front runners until that point and then just let them break off. Almost when I got to the top of that hill and started to see them pick up their pace, I almost had that moment of like, screw it, I'm sticking with them. It's like, let's do this. So I managed to just about hold it back and just enjoyed that last 1.5 K. Let those guys go ahead and do what they do because I didn't want to risk that injury. And that still took 10th place, so I was still happy overall. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like if I had done it, I would have stuck with the front rows. That's as simple as that. I would have had no issue holding them. Certainly not saying I would have won it, but I would have been in top, let's say top 6, top 6.
Yeah. I mean, 13K, what's that? Only like under 40 minutes, right?
It was on trail, so we were
right,
so we came in just under an hour kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it was along the Cotswolds, the Cotswolds Way. So it's
lovely
kind of
view.
Amazing. Well, say that it was all just clouds and rain.
It was pissing it down. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was brutal. But yeah, it was good. It was a good run. I managed to do it exactly the way I wanted. Yeah, and that was I didn't taper down for it. I just wanted to use it as a kind of tester, see how my ankle felt, see if I could stick in the mix, which I did quite easily. And then, just kind of execute a game plan that allowed me to kind of finish it healthily, which is exactly what happened. Definitely walked away from it confident knowing that I could have put that sprint on at the end. And
at least you kind of know
those guys. But because it was one of those races where it's like, if I had fallen or I had rode my ankle again or something like that, I'd be absolutely gutted because I've got a Spartan race in 4 weeks' time now. And that's the race I need to do well in because it's a qualifier for like a bigger event.
Yeah.
So I was never kind of putting that in jeopardy. So that was all good confidence boost. And then outside of that, it's just standard training, working towards that Spartan race. One thing that I am trying to do at the moment is just get a bit more weight on me. So just the standard thing, lifting heavy, eating more. Just making those small adjustments in my diet, which is great because first of all, everyone loves eating more.
If you eat more food,
it's never a bad thing. But I'm just doing that on a kind of mild progression. It's not like some big, horrible, dirty bulk. It's just kind of like a few extra calories with everything I have. So if I have a bowl of porridge, it's a slightly bigger bowl of porridge. If I have a bagel, it's 1.5 bagels. It's really easy to do. So you're literally adding a few hundred calories a day and you can adjust it week on week depending on how it goes. I think the only major adjustment I've had to do really just to get extra calories in is finish the day probably about an hour to half an hour before I go to bed. I'll just have another big bowl of porridge and a protein shake. So that's like the only real addition to my day. The rest of my day is just everything as normal but slightly more. That's generally my approach to dieting anyway. If I was to look at losing weight, I would do everything that I normally do, but the opposite direction. I'd just trim it back a little bit.
That's why, like
it's so easy.
It's good to sort of, you don't have to eat the same thing every day, but like more or less the same thing every day, roughly. Once you've kind of done it for long enough and you kind of see where your weight's at. Like I know I'm always at maintenance now, basically permanently. I like throughout the week anyway. So it's just like I know exactly now roughly what I need to eat to just maintain my weight. And if I want to I don't want to ever put on or lose weight, I'm kind of perfect where I'm at. But like, it's much easier to do. You don't have to necessarily count every calorie that goes in. Once you kind of find your baseline, it's far easier just to add and subtract from that. But if your diet's all over the place, you're eating different times a day, you're eating different amounts every single day, it's really hard to monitor.
I think that's a really, really big thing. And I think that's exactly where people fail. So I don't eat exactly the same things every single day, but exactly the same as you. I know roughly, without counting my calories, what my daily food intakes. I eat at roughly the same time each day and I eat roughly the same amounts each day. So it's really easy to make those adjustments. Things like breakfast doesn't change. It's always been protein, a bit of fruit and protein shake, bowl of porridge and a bit of fruit. That's really easy to adjust to eat less or more. And then it's the same throughout the day. What I'm snacking on is generally the same snacks. What I'm eating for lunch, what I'm eating for dinner, it's generally the same things. So it's really, really easy to make those adjustments in either direction. Like you say, if your day is kind of like grab my breakfast on the fly and then run off and grab a mid-morning snack from the supermarket, that one day could be like, a massive thing of sandwiches. The next day could be a pasty. The next day could be a banana. Like, there's no consistency there. So exactly as you say, like, how do you know what your maintenance is?
Yeah.
It's also just less stressful if you know what you need to eat.
Yeah, it's like the old, like, people say, like, Einstein used to wear the same clothes every day because it took the thought out of it. I think Ricky Gervais is the same as that as well. He always wears the same goddamn tracksuit. Elton John seems to wear the same tracksuit every day. It just takes the thought out of it. It's just like one less thing to worry about in the day. Like, and I think that's why it's almost weird, because it's almost the reason why people avoid going down that route, because then it is something they have to think about. When they don't think about it, it's like, oh, if you're like on your 9 to 5 and on your lunch break, if you have a cafe at your job, you pop to Tesco, get a meal deal, whatever it is, like, that's not taking the thought about. That's how people then get takeaways on the way home, because they're not thinking about it.
Because they're not thinking about it. So it's kind of, it does weirdly kind of work both ways. But if you kind of get into a habit, it does become less of a thought after like a while. Once you kind of get into the habit, it's just like, I don't think about, when I do my Tesco shop now, it's just autopilot. Pure autopilot. Like, I know exactly where I'm in and out in 5 minutes. My Tesco shop is exactly, and that's exactly the point I was going to lead on to. So I do mine online each week, and I just reordered last week.
Get that delivery.
The only thing I need to adjust is generally snacks for my children. When it comes to sort of mine and Kate's, it's generally the same thing. It's the same amount of fruit. It's the same amount of porridge. It's the same amount of bread. Exactly. Like, we know what we're having. Sounds boring, but this is also easier when you've got children as well. We literally know what our tea is every day. That's not because we're food obsessed. It's just because, one, it takes the stress out of it, exactly like you say. It makes shopping a lot easier, because whether you're doing it online or in person, like, it's a chore. But also, when you've got children as well, you need to know what food they're going to eat. And I generally am not one of those people that's like, right, I want to make chicken nuggets and chips for my children, and then I want to make this for me. I want to make one thing that we can all eat. So
just
by knowing
time to it, if you just allocate some time, like, it really doesn't take long to cook up something like.
It really doesn't.
I hate cooking. It's annoying. It fucking takes time. I want it to be as quick as possible. Like, I don't really want to have to cook longer than 20 minutes if I can. It's very easy to make something good in that time.
You can. That's the thing. You just got to go in and get smart with it, things like that. And the same with in the mornings. I'm generally in a rush in the morning, again, because I've got 2 kids. I've got to get them ready for school. But what I do is, right before I go to bed, when I make my bowl of porridge for bed, I make a second bowl and I leave it in the fridge overnight. So in the morning, all I've got to do is throw it straight in the microwave. It's done. Right. And I know I'm literally saving myself a few minutes. But that is a few minutes that are actually quite important for you in the morning. And it also just takes the thought out of it, because whilst I'm getting them a drink or whatever it might be, my food's in the microwave warming up. And then whilst they've gone upstairs to get themselves dressed, I can eat that bowl and so on.
That's the thing. I think with mornings, especially, because I always get as much as I can, like, laid out on the night before. So especially if I'm up at 5 a.m., I just want to have to, like, go through the motions and have everything just there. I just have to, like, go through the motions with all the stuff that's already laid out for me, so I just don't have to think about anything on the morning. It also means you're probably less likely to forget stuff as well. Like,
it really does. And I think this then, that kind of, that little bit of, it's just a tiny bit of prep. It's not even pre-planning. I think that, like, rolls over really well into training, because great example of that this week is I went to the gym, I don't know, it would have been Monday or Wednesday, and Kate came along, and straight away I was just like, right, bars free. I know what my first exercise is going to be. I know what my warm-up is. I'm literally straight into it. 15 minutes later, Kate's still just like, oh, I don't know what to do. What should I do? What exercise should I do? Like, it's like, well, I'm already like 6 sets into something, and you're still figuring out what you're going to do.
That's why programming is good.
It's that tiny bit of prep, and like you say, that's what programming's for, is just kind of having things in place. And I, like I've said lots of times, I get it, going in and winging it and stuff like that. But
I had that exact conversation with someone literally last night. I was just like, he literally said to me, I was doing a program with someone which I made, and he was just like, I said, he just said he usually comes in and just goes around and does random stuff. So he thought, it'd be good probably just to have something to actually come in and do and not have to think about. It's weird. A lot of it is all just trying, so you just have to think less.
That's what it is.
The whole point of it is to make your life less stressful.
You just take those little bits of stress out, those tiny little things that individually are tiny, but if you add them up, it's minutes every day that could potentially be hours. It's
Yeah.
tiny moments of stress that could become big moments of stress and things like that.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
like if you're someone like me who tries to keep their sessions, I don't have the luxury of going to the gym and just hanging around for 2 or 3 hours. I try to get in, I try to get it done, I try to get out. I try to speak to as little amount of people as possible in that time as well, and just get my head down and do it.
All right, I won't bother you anymore.
Yeah, if you just stop. The amount of times I've had to send a text, I think I've probably done it to you. I probably had to send a text to someone afterwards, be like, really sorry, wasn't being rude, I just had to get it done.
No, it's fine.
And it's kind of like, if you're somebody like that, that tiny bit of prep is so valuable, because instead of getting there and having to think about it, you just get there and know. And it's always worth then also just having in the back of your mind, like, what happens if you do get there and that bar or that platform is being used? It's like, right, what's your backup? Know that as well. So like I've said before about, like, it's always good to just mix the order up or switch things up. I had somebody the other day, I was squatting. They literally stood there for nearly 30 minutes while I finished my squats on the rack. And in my head, I'm just like, well, do something else. This is awkward for us both now. And it's like, and like I said, a lot of people don't have that luxury of time. It's either you're going to be really late for what you're doing next, or you aren't doing anything next and you've got as long as you want to be here. But for me, 30 minutes is a really valuable piece of time that I should be productive. So again, that's where that tiny bit of prep is. It's like, I get that, I can't squat. That's fine. Right, I'm going to jump on and do pull-ups first, or whatever it might be. Just know what to do next.
I had an annoying guy yesterday. Well, I was doing a bit of finger training, and I was talking to a mate of mine in the gym, and there was a guy on the preacher curl for ages, and he was on the phone. He wasn't even using the equipment. He was just on the phone, just talking to someone, and also quite loudly and annoyingly. And then he got off the phone, and then he left the preacher curl.
That was it.
That was it. Like, he wasn't even really going to use it.
He was just sitting there. It was just
he was just using it as, like, he was using it, got on the phone, and then I'm pretty sure after that he just left. I was like, Christ, dude, like, it's not a very big gym. It's
no.
Crap like that, dude, pisses me off so much.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've already said this on it, but I pulled someone a couple months ago because I wanted to do bench, and I was just polite. I was like, oh, I've got much more to do. And they were just kind of like, yeah, I got like 2 sets or something like that. And I was like, well, do you know what? By the time I get a bar out and put some weights on it, that is 2 sets. And I kind of like, I just sort of had a little bit of a sort of stretch, had a little bit of water. I came over and I was like, oh, have you got much left to do? And the guy's like, oh, I still got 2 sets to do. And I was like, dude, you're fucking playing chess on your phone.
Right.
I was like, it's like, just either play chess or do bench press.
Yeah,
like just one or the other. I
chess or press, bro. Chess or press.
Yeah, literally chess or press. It was like, for fuck's sake, it's like, I get it. People do want to occupy themselves between the sets, but yeah, it's just like, Jesus, like you're not even just quickly flicking through or replying to a text. Like, you're literally playing a game of chess, which you get engrossed in that is.
It's like, you either want to up your elo, or you just want to, or do your bench. Like, what do you want, a bigger chest or a bigger elo? That's the question.
It was just like, what is happening here? Like, the guy kind of like got his ass in his hand a little bit and took the plates off and walked off. I was like, well, I've got the bench now, I don't care.
Yeah, that's sound.
But it's mad how much time people waste. Like, phones, like, I get it. I take my phone to the gym, and do you know what I do is put my phone on the floor. I unlock it so that it like won't turn itself off, and I just keep it on my program, and I don't look at anything else, just so I can follow through like what I've got to do for that session. Now, I do understand that people go to gym, people have got phones, and people are going to be looking at their phones and stuff like that, but the amount of time that people actually waste is just incredible. I did a few weeks back, I did a rowing AMRAP. So what was it? I think it was rowing, pull-ups, and I think some dumbbell push presses or something like that. And it was just 20 minutes. It was like a 200-meter row, I don't know, 8 pull-ups, 10 push press or something like that. I can't quite remember. But there was a guy sat opposite on the leg extension machine. So you can obviously see him from where the rowers are.
Yeah.
right? It was a 21-minute AMRAP. In that time, I never saw him move his legs once. Just literally sat there on his phone for the entire period. But you know he's going to have that conversation later. I was like, yeah, been to the gym for an hour and a half today.
Yeah, I sat in the gym for an hour and a half today.
It's just, I'd love to have that time. I'd love to recover like that between my
21-minute rest. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Because I time my rest like with a stopwatch on my phone. Usually at least two. Usually at least two. Most of the time about 3 minutes. So I'll put the stopwatch on, and do you know what? A lot of the time I will leave my phone open at the end of like the bench or whatever, so people can see that I'm like actually waiting for the rest time. I'm actually counting my rest times. I'm not just sat there. I might then look at my phone a tiny bit, and then put it back and just sit there or chat to someone or something like that. But I put that there so people know I'm not just not doing anything. I am actively waiting for my rest time I'm actively waiting for my rest time.
Because I'm the opposite. I literally, my rest is the time it takes me to change the plates.
Right.
And there's purpose for me to do that. Now I know that I could go heavier in any one session if I had bigger rest periods, but again, because I compete at things, I don't have the luxury of any rest between an obstacle or an exercise or whatever it might be, because obviously everything's timed. So for me, I want to get straight back into a working set as quickly as possible. Right. So there is absolute method to why I do that. The flip side of that is I totally appreciate why people rest. If I was just purely going in there to work strength or purely going in there to bodybuild, whatever it might be, then I would be probably doing exactly the same as you, timing my rest periods. But yeah, they certainly wouldn't be like 21 minutes. I would love that.
You probably then you've cooled down, but that's a cool down. That's not a rest. Damn.
Absolutely.
I've been changing the topic completely, but I've been noticing like recently, because I do a lot of reading and like looking up and stuff and whatever, and I feel like I've gotten to a point now where like with a lot of training stuff where I really just question everything now. I've gotten to a point now where if I say, like, someone says to me something in like solid stone, like this is this and this is how it should be, and like this modality should be this way, train this way, use this, use that, use this because of that, I'm just like, I always have a but response, like, but what this, but what about that? Like I've gotten to a point now where I just, if anything tells me anything like solidified, I'm just like, I can't believe it until I've like physically gone away and like read as much as I can on that subject. It's to the point now where I just like, I've stopped like trusting people as much with information, because like people will tell you completely different things. You don't know who to believe. They'll both have sources for their information. And you get to a point where you realize how much about fitness and anatomical stuff and how the body works that we just don't know. We know like we still really don't know how muscle grows, which is nuts. Like we still don't know exactly how the whole process works after all this research and all the data, like, because there's just, the human body is so goddamn complicated. So it's like, if anyone, I feel like when people will tell me like this, that, and the other, I'm like, but what about this? But what about that? Or like, are you sure about this? Are you sure about... I feel like sometimes I come across as a bit of a dick because I feel like I'm constantly just like questioning everything now. But I've gotten to that point now where I just like, once you've done enough reading for so long, you really do get to a point where it's just, you start questioning. Everyone has their own, there are like a lot of science, generally speaking, is either fact or not. Like it is or it isn't. Like, the sun is a certain way, the planet is a certain way, either isn't. But with the human body, there is some things where people, based on the limited research that we have on certain things, it's just a matter of opinion. And then anecdotal evidence based on their own personal experience, which then informs that opinion. So it's like, it's so messy. It's like things really just, there's so much nuance to everything. So much like different application depending on the person that you're talking about, depending on who it is. I think generally speaking, for general population, most of the specifics don't really matter that much at all anyway. So it's just, I feel like I've gotten to that point now. I've noticed in the past week or so, I'm just like, Christ, I really just I don't know what I believe in anymore.
Well, the thing is though, like there's like, you can really strip that back to like something really simple. And it's that whole kind of thing that, and I've seen this kind of loads of times where people are sort of like, I don't know, let's use a runner like Eliud Kipchoge, for example. I'm going to follow Eliud Kipchoge's plan. I'm going to do exactly what he does every single day. I'm still not going to run like him. That's it. Yeah, because his body responds to things a very different way. His body is genetically made up very different to my body, that kind of thing. So what works for him is absolutely not going to work for me. I think that's my front door. 2 seconds.
Yeah. Is it another parcel?
It could well be.
Oh, we should start doing parcel hour on the show.
One eternity later.
I think it's just go away.
How many packages were there?
Well, there's 2 for me, but there was 1 for the person across the road, and I think that spun out. The thing is, I was like, it's some mad old lady.
Let's crack it open then. We'll see what it is.
There was a big spider climbing up her leg and started to climb up her top. And I was like, in my head, I was like, do I tell her or not? And it's just like, nah, let's see what happens.
Let her find it out.
You hear the car crashing.
Yeah, it's going to crash into that old lady next door.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. There we go. That's the second time that's happened now to her.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. That's so fun.
Nice. What were we saying? Oh yeah, we were talking about the differences in training, yeah, and things like that. So it absolutely, like, there is no kind of cookie cutter program or anything like that just works. I'm not going to follow the same program as, I don't know, Chris Bumstead, for example, and look like Chris Bumstead. I know we've said all of these sort of things before, because it just doesn't work like that. Different people's bodies work in different ways. Obviously, there's other factors at play there and things like that. But quite interesting. There's a guy on YouTube. Is it Ryan Humiston? I don't know. Really, really good channel. Really entertaining. But what the guy's been doing recently is actually putting electrodes on him as he's going through the range of motion of exercise, and he's following what has always been scientifically the correct range of motion, and he's seeing where the most stimulus is kicking in the muscle at certain places.
That, EMG.
Yeah, exactly.
Electromyography.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that, like, everything we thought we knew for all this period of time is absolutely wrong. And just like the tension is kicking in at different places.
EMC. Talking about EMG is another sketchy one sometimes.
Yeah.
Because like surface level EMG doesn't necessarily correlate. Like, so for example, there's an EMG study on I think muscle activation in the side plank, right?
Yeah.
So they put electrodes in various places, and the glute activation was like really, really, really high. So it doesn't necessarily mean if I want to grow my glutes, I'm going to side plank.
No.
Does that make sense? So like things that require like a high degree of stability will show a high level of activation.
Yeah.
You can get lower level EMG because obviously trying to target like more deep muscles is harder because it's only surface level EMG. So if I wanted, obviously I have a pec here, but if I wanted pec minor or something like that, it's kind of important. Like certain rotator cuff muscles are deep within the, you can't get to them, you know, you kind of have to do cadaver studies and cut bodies open and see like how things work. So even the EMG is another one that's even can be a little bit sketchy. And
100%.
The best kind of studies we can do on things like that is you do one protocol and you assess lean body mass change at the end of that. If you want to see how things grow, that's the best way of doing it, rather than just seeing activation alone. Because anything, with a higher degree of stability will just show a higher level of activation, irrespective of whatever. You know.
It's really interesting because there's Ironman athletes, so obviously they put themselves through a lot of training, especially like the world class guys. And there was 2 Ironman athletes that I was reading about recently who are they're world class. They're both like either world champion or previous world champion, so they're like top of the game, and this is like full Ironman distance, and they're both being coached by the same person. And throughout, let's say they did an 18-week block of training, whatever it might be, their training is going to mirror each other exactly throughout that entire block of training. Where it changes, however, is in the last 3 to 4 weeks for them when they're starting to taper down for their race. One of those people needs to really, really start to back off, let his body recover, just start working really aerobically and just almost go into a maintenance mode so that he's ready and fresh come race day. The other person needs to actually be working at a higher velocity and working closer to kind of tempoed and lactate threshold, where he's actually really working his body. So his body is actually going into it stimulated. And even to the point where the day before race day, where people either take a day off, or they have a really, really light run just to kind of keep their bodies active, he's still working things at kind of 70 to 80%. He's still going at a kind of tempo pace, because that's what allows his body to respond to it. Now, what they haven't done at this point is actually kind of gone in and done like any like real scientific. This is all very anecdotal. Yeah, one of them feels better following this protocol into the final 4 weeks, and one of them feels much better like this. And the results have proved it. When they've both followed the same protocol, i.e. tapering down properly, one of them has massively performed better than the other. When they've both gone in following that kind of more tempo pace going into the final 4 weeks, one of them again has outperformed the other one because one is exhausted. And it's really, really interesting like that. It just proves that at all levels, even at the highest level, the protocols are not the same.
Not the same. No.
People respond differently to different stimulus.
100%. On that note, I have got to go. Got to go
Nice.
ET someone. Good. Yeah. So that was Bless, right? Back in the swing of things now, though, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
There we go.
Pretty much 40 minutes as well.